So, welcome everybody to our session on teacher training as a pathway into eco-social education. So we've got 3 amazing presentations here and a lot of people with a lot of amazing experiences to share beyond that also. We've been talking a lot about teacher training as one aspect that seems really like a really important strategic point when it comes to thinking about how eco-social education can be made to happen in schools somehow. And we already heard a lot about different experiences in different sessions. So we thought it would be really good to dedicate a proper session to this and hear from different experiences. And we're super happy to have those of you sharing things with us today, also because we've got very different perspectives, and we've also got different kind of regional experiences, I guess. And in terms of the order of the day of the presentations, we will have first a climate action short course, which is doing work in Ireland mostly, or only, I think. You will tell us more about the kind of specific geographic focus. Working with schools, but coming sort of from the outside, right? And bringing things into schools, if I understood your work correctly. So we've got Oni and Nancy, who will share their experiences with us of the potentials and possibilities, and also, you know, some of the challenges they are meeting in this amazing work that they're doing. Second up, we're going to have Martina Huber-Kriegler, who is working with Teachers for Future in Austria and Graz, and who has been working as a teacher trainer for a long time in what in Austria is called the pedagogische Hochschulen, so these academies, state academies that train teachers. So she will also share her perspective from this long-standing experience as a teacher, and thinking about those kinds of institutions and what can be done within them. And then we'll have Raúl Almendro from EduAlter, who has already shared some amazing stuff with us in our first session on EcoSocial Education. Share reflections on the work of EduAlter, because EduAlter does a lot of teacher training also, based out of Barcelona and Catalonia, to kind of, again, think through also maybe concepts we need and challenges and different methodologies. So I think a lot of things we talked about previously come together in this session also, and we will spin them forward. And we're really looking forward to these different perspectives from these different angles of approach also to teacher training. I will pass over to you, Nelly.
Yeah, and the really beautiful thing is that the further we go in these forum sessions, that actually the contributions are coming out of the group which are making up the forum. And so this session comes out of the conversation from the last session, where we were talking about our young people, the future, to change our mindsets, and then who's teaching these young people, and who's teaching those who are teaching those young people when we're talking about institutions. So I'm really excited about continuing this thinking together. So yeah, let's start with Nancy and Oni from Climate Action Short Course.
Cool. I hope you can hear me. I had to swap to my phone because my computer's acting up. Thank God for phones. Yeah, you can hear me okay?
Yeah. Can you all see that?
I can see it anyway. Sorry.
We can see and hear you. You probably can't see us. We were all giving you the thumbs up, but yes.
Yeah, I forgot. Okay, thanks a million. Yeah, Anya's going to share, and I'm going to do the general introduction to the background of our project here in Ireland, which is just running in Irish schools at the moment. And then Anya is going to go into a little bit of the detail of what we've been seeing in our teacher training and some student feedback. And yeah. Okay, so our project is called Climate Action Short Course, and it started in 2021. And basically it is inserted into the first part of secondary schools in Ireland. So I just wanted to explain first, the Irish school system has 2 parts, let's say, to its main 5-year cycle at secondary school level. And so the first 3 years is called junior cycle, and the second 2 years is the senior cycle. So our course is running in the first 3 years with students from about 12 to 15 years old. And it is a 100-hour short course, as they call it, and normal full subjects are 200 hours approx, depending on some subjects. And basically, this idea of a short course is a recently new thing. And very briefly, it became an option about, I think, 7-8 years ago now in the Irish school system, whereby some short courses are written by the appropriate state body that introduces subjects into schools, but they also gave the option for independent agencies to also write these short courses, which are non-exam based. And this is where the team that originally wrote this course with 2 school teachers and an independent educator came up with the idea to write a climate action short course. So next slide, thanks. Okay, so very briefly, our pilot program has been running, it's in our 3rd year now, so we're nearly finished our first 3 years. And basically our idea has been to offer training to teachers, to develop some resources with the teachers and put them up on our website that you might have seen, and to give other supports, whether it's online peer sessions or individual calls, etc., to the teachers. Okay, next slide. So in the pilot schools, what we offer them are mostly, let's say, online trainings, which can be workshops or peer sessions where they get to discuss more. We've had so far 2 days of in-person trainings per year, which is what teachers really find the most useful. And then we ask them for different types of feedbacks through questionnaires, live, like in sessions online. We've managed to do some school visits this past year, and we've also done individual calls. At the moment now, every year we've recruited a couple more schools. So now we have 40 teachers in 29 schools in those locations around the country. So it's grown a little bit. Very quickly, we have kind of 3 basic types of methodologies that we've asked teachers to use. So like the holistic learner-centered, which we're really trying to start from where the students are starting, let's say. And then the next one is, I think, the place-based education, which includes all the outdoor stuff and then other community locations, and really offering that sense of belonging to where they're based in the country. And the last one is a focus on democratic citizenship, whereby they really should be choosing a lot of the topics and the types of actions that they get to do as part of their course. So I think at this point, was it Anya was going to start talking about how the teachers,
yeah. We'll go back to what the teachers say at the very end. We have a short video to show you. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that was the kind of overview of the course. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about what are they actually teaching in the course, how do they respond to that, and what are we doing to support them to teach the course well. So some kind of key aspects of the course that these teachers are teaching is critical thinking skills, so young people can like research and analyze sources around climate change. Understanding the root causes of climate change. So it's a big piece. It's one of the reasons this course was developed, because there are a lot of environmental programs in Ireland, but they're really about planting trees, recycling, turning off the lights in the school, pieces like that, and not linking them into systems, colonialism, economic systems, capitalism, those kind of questions. So we're trying to really bring that piece into the education system. As Nancy said, it's all about democracy. It's all about the young people using like shared decision-making, consensus decision-making, choosing the research topics and actions that they want to focus on, with, backed up by information that the teachers are giving them. And that every year they all have to do a collective action targeting the root causes. Now, obviously, that's a massive ask. Any of you who are activists know that targeting the root cause with an action, if we were able to do that, we would have solved the climate crisis. But the idea is trying to push them more towards trying to identify what are the root causes of an issue that we're experiencing, and not just doing those recycling projects, those turning off your light projects, things like that. And the other key thing is it's not about climate science. So we're really trying to pull it back from getting really stuck into knowing all about the greenhouse gases and more looking at those kind of more social aspects, and solutions focused. So, or alternatives focused. So teachers have an option. So we have a list of learning outcomes that the teachers have to hit every year. And the teachers have an option of just looking at those learning outcomes and making their own resources, and classroom resources based on that. We also have developed a whole 100 hours of off-the-shelf classroom resources that week by week bring you through a journey. We developed those. Originally, the idea was that we wouldn't develop those, but in the very first year, we realized that teachers were coming to this with a total lack of understanding of any of those concepts of like root causes, colonialism, capitalism, you know, anything. For a lot of teachers, anything past the recycling was a massive leap for them. And they also, we say that they should be using these like outdoor learning, global citizenship education or development education, games, role plays, you know, all these other alternative methodologies. And for a lot of teachers, that's totally outside what they've ever been trained in. So that's why we had to come back and develop these classroom resources for them. From our research with students, we know that when the teachers use the methodologies that we've suggested and the ideas and the concepts that we suggest that they use, students have the best experience in the classroom. Where they don't, students report many different types of more negative experiences, whether that's hopelessness, or boredom, and anything else on a spectrum in between that. So we know that our methodologies and concepts are working when they're worked well. So yeah, some of our teacher findings so far. For most teachers, this is totally radical, totally new. I just put into Google Images, new and scary, and I got this image, and I feel like for a lot of teachers, this is how they feel when they first come into the course. They're like, what the hell? I've never done anything like this. And then they're just exhausted by the end of the year trying to figure out how to put things into place, what they're doing, learning new things. So yeah, that's I think both bewildered and baffled and sometimes a bit angry at us almost because we're making them do something that they find very uncomfortable. As with, I assume, most education systems across Europe and Ireland, teachers are under a lot of time pressure. There's a lot of paperwork. They really don't have time. This is 1 hour each week for them with a class. They don't have time to do upskilling. It's not important to them. Even if it's personally important, they really can't focus on it. So that's a big issue for us. And yeah, as I said before, they're really in that space originally. Like most of the things they tend to do with their kids at the moment is beach cleaning, litter picking. We know there's nothing wrong with that, but we're really trying to bring them deeper into a deeper analysis and a deeper set of actions around the climate crisis. So yeah, so why is this happening? These are very complex topics. We always say, you know, myself and Nancy, we were activists. It took us years and years to get to this point where we have a deeper critical understanding of all these complex topics around climate change and climate crisis. And we're really asking these teachers to, maybe they get told in August that they're teaching this topic, and in September, they're trying to teach it to 30 children. So this is a process of years, is what we've realized, and trying to figure out how to not freak teachers out, not make them totally scared, while challenging them to be ambitious, and not just fall back into what they already know. So they're learning as they teach. New methodologies, so games and role plays and things like that. Some teachers find it really difficult. They're unlearning traditional classroom management and hierarchies where they're at the top of the classroom. They say things like, I can't play games, my kids need to learn respect first. I can't bring my group outdoors, they're much too naughty. We've had instances where this is an image of a nettle, where a teacher brought a kid outside and a group outside and one kid grasped a nettle and they sting you. And she brought the whole lot indoors and said, we're never going outside again. Our response is, kid is never going to do that again. It's not harmful, it's a little bit stinging. But teachers are very, very afraid of these new methodologies. They don't trust kids. They don't think the kids know what they want. They think the kids will make bad decisions. And also students are really not used to being asked their opinions. So there's a skill there in a teacher encouraging students and letting students have a voice. So there's time there that really needs to be built in. And finally, what's pretty interesting to us is we're seeing younger and older teachers are more likely to be open to this type of education. So younger teachers may have been exposed to this in teacher training college a little bit more, and they're more eager, they're willing to try things out. Older teachers are more confident in the classroom, they know how to manage kids, whereas teachers who are maybe 5, 6, 7 years out of college, they're not new, they're not old. We get so many of those who say, I don't like it, I don't think it works, I'm a geography teacher, I'm going to teach them geography. I'm a science teacher, I'm just going to teach them science. So it's quite interesting. It's about confidence and eagerness. Okay, so what are we doing to tackle these issues? So one of the most important things that we have found is getting teachers in person to a training. It is the best thing. They experience what we're like, taking them through particular methods that we're trying to teach them, or we're trying to get them to use, letting them actually experience it gives them the confidence to teach in the classroom. It's obvious, but it's also very hard. We can only get them twice a year, and at that, not all of them come twice a year. So it is the best piece. We started this course, as we said, with an idea that teachers were going to be able to hit the ground running and teach it, and what we were going to be struggling with maybe is, you know, changing little words here and there in the specification and the learning outcomes. What we found is we have to go right back to basics. Like, why are we using these methodologies? Why are we doing these ideas? So we've gone back and we've done systems thinking with them. We've gone back and we've done, in March, I ran a training and we went back and we looked at a town in Ireland that had been flooded this year, and we went, why should young people learn how to use their voice? Well, if they're in a town like this, what's important for them? If they're in a situation where their town has been flooded, what do they need to know? What skills do they need to have? And so they don't need to know, you know, the 10 different ways that they don't need to know the climate science. They need to know conversation skills. They need to know debate skills. They need to know how to work well with each other, to communicate. And so I guess, yeah, bringing it back to those spaces. And then things like, this was a game we did with them around plastics. So going, not just looking at recycling, not just looking at overconsumption, but going back and saying, you know, following the supply chain and saying, where is plastic being made? Who is making the plastic? What are the economical situations that mean that plastic is constantly washing up our beaches? So trying to really bring the teachers back so that they feel confident going in and they know why they're teaching this stuff. Peer learning, really, really important. When they hear from another teacher that it's worked, then they're much more confident to teach them. When we say, try it, it'll work really well, they're more likely to go, yeah, you're not a teacher, so get out of here, which is fair enough. Personal revelations of their own learning paths. So again, getting them to sit down and go, actually, do you know what? Even though I'm very scared of this, it makes me very uncomfortable. Last year, I would never have played a game in the class, and this year I'm playing games every week. Or last year I would never have brought my kids outdoors, but this year I am, and I have seen that these 5 children are having a much more positive experience. So giving them the chance to do that is really important. And then, like, encouraging them to test stuff. So that's kind of comes after the peer learning piece. But when they do test stuff, we often get teachers saying, I looked at a resource you gave me, I thought it was stupid, I gave it a go, and you know, I was really surprised at how the students took it. And just giving, like, little by little, encouraging them to test little pieces, not forcing them to do everything, but finding the smaller pieces that are maybe more accessible to them. They test them, they get surprised by the students, and then they test another piece. So we're not really there yet, but trying to find that balance. And for every teacher, it's different. For every class, it's different. For every context, it's different. So yeah, where we're at the moment is trying to find, I guess, a balance where we're making something that works for everyone as much as possible, but is adaptable to as many circumstances and experiences as possible. So one of the key things that we're going to try next as well is pulling back. So at the very start, we had 7 teachers, and those 7 teachers are probably our most, now they've been with us for 3 years, but they also got the most one-on-one experience. We've got 40 teachers now. There's 2 of us. We work 2 days a week. It's almost impossible for us to talk to 40 teachers. And we find that the ones that we don't talk to are much less confident, are much less engaged, and they kind of are often off doing their own thing, which isn't in line with what we're trying to do. So what we're going to try and do next is create more structured peer support spaces that are more regular and online, and more one-to-one mentoring. And then the last thing to say is this has been a bit, yeah, if you don't think my slides are the best ever, I'm a bit picky about my slides. One of the reasons is we are currently actively seeking new funding. We're in the middle of writing a big funding application at the moment. But if you know of any funder or anyone who might like to fund this amazing project, please let us know. And yes, I think I'm actually going to have to run off, and I'm going to leave the rest to Nancy. Maybe Nancy, you want to show?
Yeah, we were going to show a little clip of a video that we've been that we put together with our teachers in the last teacher training, which was in September last year. Well, that's when we made the video. There was another training in March. So I was going to ask, I don't know if it's Manuela or Nelly, that if they can put on the video, because now I'm on my phone. So if you could let it run for the first 2 minutes,
okay,
we
give
can
me
get
1 minute.
No worries, no worries. So you'll hear 2 teachers talking about their experiences with the climate short course, and basically just to give you an idea of these 2 original teachers that have been there the longest in the course. I know there was a last slide that Anya didn't put up, and the presentation will also be sending on, I suppose, through Common Ecologies to everyone. And the last slide was just a couple of phrases from some students as well, who always seem to enjoy much more the outdoor classes. So when teachers tell us they won't take them outdoors, it's very hard to hear, but we keep encouraging them. So yeah, if you have the video, cool. Yeah, the first 2 minutes would be great. Thanks. Oh, I can't hear the audio, but I think you might have to change your settings on Zoom for that.
Also, Manu is silenced, so maybe because of that.
Maybe.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Sorry, I'm not the biggest genius on this. Let me try starting from the beginning. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you might have to change your settings to something, but
Let me try
it.
now.
Yeah.
Tell me if this works.
About global warming, carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases. So I felt I was a bit of an expert in this area. I saw that the short course being advertised. I went, oh, that's something that I can get involved in. So I went along, got to school, signed up, went along to some of the earlier training days, and very quickly became very aware that I was not an expert. Very daunted about, like, how am I going to teach this? What have I signed up for? But we got some great speakers in. It was fantastic just to get the wealth of background knowledge and I really started getting more confidence and growing in my ability to talk to students about some of these things that before I just wouldn't have felt that I could do in the classroom. I couldn't talk about these issues to my students because I just didn't have the background knowledge.
Our teachers are really motivated with all that they've been learning on climate action short course. They have been learning about the links between climate action and climate justice, colonialism, extractivism. And even though this has been challenging, they are really empowered now with the changes that they see in their students. Getting the chance to kind of do things that they wouldn't get to normally do in school, getting to go down onto the streets of the city centre and engage with the public doing an action really like brought them from having a negative attitude towards school to being really positive about participating and learning something. Like a big trip we did to a coal-fired power station, they started making a presentation themselves to first years about how incredible this was to see. And like this was just them taking it into their own hands that they needed to share this with other students.
I think you wanted.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, perfect.
I hope you could hear.
Yeah, I think the background music and all that wasn't there because of the settings in Zoom, but no worries, we'll be linking it up in YouTube soon so folks can have a better look as well. So I'll leave it there because I know the time is ticking. Thank you very much. And
thank you so much. Ani already had to leave, so should we leave the questions for the end to everybody? Like the questions for everyone?
Yeah, I'm not sure if she might be still hearing, but maybe
you're
she
here.
just...
Okay.
Yeah, she's still listening.
So yeah, because Anya is having to leave, we said that if there are some questions for climate action short course specifically that you want to ask now, then we can do that, and then later we'll have time to speak more thoroughly all together. But yeah, if there's any question, thanks so much. There's so many things that I was thinking, and then you were mentioning them. To me, it was really great to hear you and to start with your presentation. Like, what do teachers actually find useful, and how do we then train them, and all of this stuff around. Like, it's a political and pedagogical training that you're doing, right?
True. Yeah, it's very dense. And obviously, if the questions don't come now, I can also answer them pretty well afterwards if folks are still thinking.
Anyone wants to quickly say something before we move on to Martina and Raul?
Actually, I don't really have a question, but a comment. I could relate to all of what you said so very well. Sounds very familiar to me. And I think it has to do a little bit also with that being secondary school teachers. Because the last 10 years, I worked with grade school teachers, and they are much more used to these open methods, to learning with all senses and all of that, than secondary teachers. There's a big gap that I've also noticed in Austria, at least.
Yeah.
In
So
methodology.
Sorry.
In the methodology that is being taught and being used in the schools. Okay.
So maybe just because I think that is a really interesting debate that we could get in deeper after we heard from all of you. And Dana is also saying that is similar to South Africa. So yeah, I think these kind of structural things will be super interesting to discuss, because I feel the same. It's so much easier to get into primary schools, etc. But if there's no concrete question right now, why don't we just continue with you, Martina, and you share a little bit, and then we have deeper conversations after. There's quite a few topics that I feel like be really interesting to discuss.
I'll try.
Thank you again, Anya, in case you have to rush off.
Okay, now. Can you see in my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I was asked to talk about the potentials of teacher education. And of course, I started with the question, why teacher education? And that's a very simple one. Every future teacher is a multiplier for decades. Usually teachers work for 30 years. And I did a very quick calculation. So if you reckon you have 25 pupils, and you have the next 25 pupils the next year, then you reach about 3,000 to 5,000 students during your career, plus their families, because kids usually always talk at home about what they heard in school. And these families, again, reach out to their local communities. And what I've learned in the 30-some years that I worked in teacher education, it is a politically very sensitive field. Maybe for you to have some idea what my background is, I'm actually a language teacher. I studied German and English, and I worked for German as a second language and intercultural education for most of my career. And the switch to global citizenship and to climate education was very recent, actually. But what I really learned the hard way, that politics is very much involved, at least in the Austrian system. And I can only talk from my personal experience. Yeah, I'm not a scientist. I don't have studies that my observations are based on. It's just what I have experienced, okay? So the basis of innovation is science, supposedly. So teacher education is supposed to be, and it needs to be, science-based. And it needs to take scientific developments and results into account. But the big but is the results of science, and the actual current developments very often contradict the general political narratives and goals. Again, from my background, science, for instance, German, about language acquisition in the second language, tells you it's best to have kids in mixed groups with as many native speakers as possible. Politics has decided, no, we put all the language learners together in one class for at least 2 years, and it doesn't work. And we would have known beforehand, and we had many scientists saying this is not going to work the way people imagine it. And yet political decision makers have decided the other way. And of course, the educational system is embedded in the societal context, and it reflects the values of a society to a degree. However, changes in society happen at a very fast rate, and educational systems are really, really slow in adapting to these new realities. One of my bosses who worked in school development said a fundamental change in an educational system like ours takes about 30 years on average. Okay, so that is a very long time. And school curricula, at least in Austria, are usually valid for at least 10 years, a university curriculum for a minimum of 5 years. So I'm talking minimum. Some curricula have been much older and have been used for much longer times. But that's, yeah, the minimum. And the ones that we have now are mostly not yet interdisciplinary, diversity sensitive, or oriented towards sustainability. But, and that's the good news, often you find those topics in the forewords or additions to the curriculum. So, for instance, in Austria, we have what's called teaching principles. And there's a number, I think there are 13 or so, and they list all the current developments, everything that comes new is put into these teaching principles because they don't want to change the curricula for the whole system, right? But that's where you can find them. For instance, intercultural education, what else? Then gender education, so a number, also environmental education and whatnot. So if you don't find it in the curriculum proper for your own subject, go to the general preamble and you will mostly find the topics that we are talking about there. What are the challenges in teacher training institutions? So national authorities are politically nominated and they influence the orientation of the whole system. In Austria, curricula have to be approved by politically, not only professional bodies. So I don't know if that's different in other countries, but here a new curriculum has to go through parliament. So it's politicians actually deciding on something that I often think professional people from the field should be able to decide, but it's not the case. And also a given fact is that there is limited time and space for new contents in curricula, which leads to a very harsh competition sometimes between subjects. So each and every subject, and in a secondary school, we usually have between 12 and 15 subjects. There is a competition. Every subject wants more teaching hours to himself, herself, itself. And then there's always a tradition in what the subject is all about, what the subject has been standing for, for the last decades or so. And now if you come up with new content, in addition to that, the competition is even harsher and fiercer. Plus, and that's a personal opinion again, another challenge is human inertia. I think many teachers and many teacher trainers want to keep teaching what they were trained for. And that often happened a long while ago. I really had to fight this myself for many decades. When I was studying, German as a second language was not a subject you could study, let alone something like intercultural education. I started in the early 80s. There were no no university courses or whatever in those fields. And now we have thousands of teachers that have to teach thousands of children that don't have German as their first language, and they need to learn new skills. It's the same as Oini and Nancy just mentioned. Teachers are not ready to teach those things because it's not been in their education, and many of them are very insecure and very reluctant to teach something that they haven't been trained for. And it's understandable to a certain degree, but at the same time, realities are so that, as we know, I mean, in Vienna, we have like 68% of the children in grade schools don't speak German as their first language. So there is a factual need for these skills. So what have I found helpful in implementing new topics lately? we found that if we based our arguments on international documents and contracts that our country signed, like the UN Convention of the Rights of Children or Agenda 2030 is something that Austria also signed. These arguments are hard to dispute and dismiss, because if you write that into your curriculum and you base your arguments on that, and you can prove that your country signed these documents, then it would be very difficult to dismiss that and say, well, it can't be in the curriculum, right? And the other strategy is to use cross-curricular approaches, which inspire collaboration instead of competition. We found that's a very difficult path to go on because of what I mentioned earlier. Every subject, every teacher tries to defend their own territorium in time. And but what helps is, for instance, if you really put down something like excursions, project work, open methods, and very important team teaching into your curriculum, then you are allowed to do it, you even have to do it. So if curriculum is something that you have an influence on, I think that's smart if you inscribe those things that are important to you in it right away. Another idea is to install, in the process of writing a curriculum, install an advisory board that has a special focus, or several advisory boards at that, to have an overview and to assure good quality. For instance, you can have a gender advisory board, a diversity board, a sustainability board. Okay. And another thing is to include something like empty spaces in the curriculum for the possibility of pulling in current topics, e.g. a course like current developments and pedagogical answers. You can leave the contents open and you can always fill it with topics that are then, current and topical. And another thing we found very important over the last 10, 15 years, also, if possible, there is that try to provide some time for emotional support. Courses like supervision for teachers or intervision. Supervision is more difficult to install, we found, but intervision in teacher education, in teacher training, is something that's very, informal and easily done. And one of my colleagues gave me that last tip. She said, check your learning models if they ever arrive at the action level. We have a lot of teaching that focuses on knowledge, maybe some that focuses on skills, but at a very theoretical level very often. And we don't break them down to the last level, to the actual action level, where kids learn how to do things. Okay. And that could also maybe help. And another thing that we have just been doing ourselves right now, or the last few months, was joining a network or creating new networks. And they offer an exchange of ideas. They offer learning from each other, with each other, intercultural, intergenerational. They offer practical support in teaching materials, in methods, and emotional support. And I think the last one, emotional support, is becoming more and more important. And especially with the climate issue, it is really tough sometimes to keep pushing these topics, and then also to deal with reactions from students. So yeah, these are some ideas. And reminder, you don't need 100% of your target group on your site. As research shows that you have to convince only the 3.5% of a society who are determined to bring about change. And they will then move the necessary 20 to 25% in the right direction. So this is something that gave me a lot of hope, because mainstream discourse is sometimes really disheartening in this field. And to know that if we are only like 3.5%, we can really get things moving. And that, I think, is a hopeful thought. Yeah, that's about it from me. I put down a few books that I would really love to recommend to you. Humankind by Rutger Bregman. A Hopeful History is something that really opened my eyes. He's a philosopher and journalist, and he describes, like, in the history that has been handed down to us, people mostly wrote about wars and conflicts. But the fact is, we would have never been as successful as a species if we hadn't been based our whole being on collaboration. And he gives a number of wonderful examples how people collaborated to create development and progress, and how believing in a good person as a basis of the philosophy would really change the whole outlook. And probably some or all of you know Rob Hopkins, and I love his book, From What Is to What If, Unleashing the Power of Imagination to Create the World We Want. And he also has a podcast series, From What If to What Next, which is really, really inspiring. And for those who read German, Margaret Rasfeld is a German educator, and she created Friday, Die Welt verändern lernen, which means it's actually a curricular concept that is adaptable for all types of schools and based on this sustainability goals. So for those who read German, maybe. Yeah, so far from me. If you have any questions or comments, I'll be happy to answer them.
Great. Thanks so much, Martina. Again, there's so much in there, and that I think will be nice to debate together. I will want to talk to you about this emotional support you're mentioning, but I think we'll leave the discussion for the end. Just there was a clarification question on what intervision is. Could you explain that?
Yeah. It's basically that peers get together and they talk about problems that they've had, or they're trying to find solutions together for their challenges, problems. And supervision is when a person that has a specific training is giving supervision to them, but intervision is a peer thing. Okay?
Yeah, that's clear. Great.
Okay.
Thanks. So yeah, so let's hear from Raul, and then we'll talk all together about all the three presentations. That's cool. Thanks a lot. So Raul, over to you. I remember in the last session that we had you, which was our first session, I asked you, and how do you train teachers politically? And you said, how do we politicize society? I really remember that. That really stayed with me. So yeah, we can talk more about it after, but I leave the floor to you.
Thank you, and yeah, good afternoon to everyone. Well, first of all, thanks to Common Ecologies for the invitation again. I'm sad I didn't make it to the rest of the forums apart from the first. Yeah, but I'm glad to be here again. And yeah, it's tough to speak here because first two interventions were super interesting and many things have been said. So I will try to add something to the discussion. Okay, as EduAlter, we are an educational association based here in Catalonia. And we mainly do teacher education for secondary teachers. We cover also primary, high schools and different ways of education, but mainly I speak from this secondary teachers training. Okay, so having said that, first of all, I would like to say something I think I already mentioned in the first forum, but I will mention it again every time you say me to come. That education for me, for us, is context dependent. No, and so is teacher training, and so are the strategies you can use. No. I mean, even in the same territory, there are several contexts, no? Depending on, I don't know, here in the city, in the neighborhood, in the socioeconomical conditions, but in the rural areas, it's also different. So for me, one thing we try to do is, if there is the possibility, is getting to know the people you are going to interact with. No? So what are the backgrounds of these teachers that you are going to deal with? No? What are their concerns? What are the challenges they find in their practice and so on? No? So maybe if you don't have the opportunity to meet them, you can do this online forum that is really trendy today or something that to get to know what are you going to find and to design your training according to that. No? And then think according to your expertise what you can offer them, no? Not offer in a clientelism way, but in a sharing way, no? And then adequate the topics, the language, the perspective, the complexity, and everything according to the background of the people you are going to deal with, no? Then second, I would say like measure the possibilities, your possibilities, and attach to them, also to your expertise, no? And this in EduAlter we like to networking with a lot of entities that are specialized in different topics, no? So now we will do a summer school, and we do 5 days, and each day is one topic. So we contact and we do this training teacher with different entities that are specialized in every topic, not so not trying to be the expert of everything, but rather network, no? And also to train yourselves continuously, of course. Then, yeah, I think there is no one correct method like to do teacher training. There is not a way. There are multiple ways, no? And yeah, I think it's good to tend to reject recipes also. But yeah, like going deeper in this, I said about the context. I think it's a nice strategy is to encourage teachers to carry out actions which are linked to the context in which the educational center or their practice is located. No, so for example, here I live in Gracia, which is a neighborhood in Barcelona, which is now like really trendy and really posh and super cool. And so it's full of tourism and digital nomads and many people which is coming with higher salaries than the locals, so that the locals have to leave, no? Because we struggle to pay the rent. Why I say that? Okay, so this is like for me is an educational opportunity, no, or educational situation. So if you are working in a school which is located in this neighborhood, maybe you could use that to speak about globalization, about consumption, about capitalism, housing crisis, climate emergency, and so on. No, there is many topics that with a specific situation, there is always a lot of things you can teach on, and I think it's good to try to encourage teachers to see it this way rather than classical topic after topic. What else? I think also to facilitate different kinds of tools, of resources, classified by topics, by levels, and so on. This is always like a good thing to do, because then they can turn back to it later, and yeah. And I would like later, if I have some time, to share with you one resource. Yeah, also for us, our commitment is like a radical critique of capitalist system, of patriarchal cis-hetero system, colonialism, expropriation of knowledge, etc. And we try to make visible different worldviews, no? And for us, this is like non-negotiable. So not to give up on this in any case, no? Explain it, why this is our way of understanding the world, and as I have said before, adapting it to the background, the context of the teachers you're training, but not to negotiate that, no, from inside the entity or whatever. What else can I say that haven't been said? For me also, I don't know how it's for you in your countries, but here in Catalonia, or yeah, even in Spain, we have these new pedagogies arriving, no, which are like super new and everything, and it's like basically they want to transform everything so that everything stays the same, no? So it's with this European funding, which consists on putting a screen in front of every children and doing some methodologies that are, no, it's more like entertaining children instead of educating them, no? So we are becoming entertainers instead of teachers. But it's like I don't know how to say it in English, like to pretend to make something new, but some kind of theater, no? So we are trying to combat or to fight against these kind of pedagogies with arguments and like with a contra hegemonical like proposta. I don't know how to say it in English. But yeah, like so like try to light the bulb of these teachers you have in front of you, that these new methodologies sometimes or most times are deepening neoliberal perspectives, individualism, digitalization, and many things that are harmful for society, and that are not passing in the directions they pretend to pass, or they want the people to think they are passing. No, I don't know if I'm explaining myself, but be critical with new pedagogies that are come and see where are they coming from, why are they coming from these places, and so on. No, try to discuss with teachers about these things, and reflect what is at the end is like what is the goal of education. No, like if it's to make more critical people and the world a better place to be, or to entertain children, or to make the next generation of workers. No, so like to discuss about the goal of education, I think is really useful for making them think about their practices. Then one thing that is working very well for us is to generate or to accompany, better than generate, teacher groups that they are, I don't know, like meeting once a month or so on. No, because most times these teachers that are more critical and they start to reflect about the world and about the practices, and they say they acknowledge that what they have been taught before is not pushing in this way, you know, or in the way they want education to be, and so on. They usually feel very isolated in their educational centers. So I think it's nice to try to make spaces, to generate spaces so that they can join together and meet sometimes, and maybe they design some materials or they go and do a workshop with other teachers. So there is a lot of co-training also, and they motivate themselves. So they combat this feeling of this reality of isolation, of being the weird teacher that is always speaking about capitalism or climate emergency or so on. No. So breaking this isolation, especially in secondary education, I think it's quite important. Okay, I will finish soon. Also I don't like to help them or to accompany them, the teachers, to acknowledge that and integrate the fact that education is political, is a political act, and what we teach and what we don't, and what we make visible and what we hide from our students is deeply political, no? And even how we behave with them or with the rest of the people in an educational institution, for me, is educating much more than what we say. So making them aware of that and also being a referent, I think it's super important when we speak about teacher training. And I agree with a lot of things that have been said, and also with this Martina said that the educational system reflects the values of a society, no? And for me, it's really important to try to break this idea that there will be a single solution. There is this tendency in society, like in the modern society or contemporary society, to reject complexity, and to try to reach to a solution fast and the only one, no? To embrace complexity and to try to make it visible and also try to enjoy these pathways to arrive to understand complex systems, no? As we are as a society. I think this is a pathway that if you can, I don't know, to be someone's like first spark to start to question these things. Well, it's really like, oh my God, I don't have the words in English there, but it's like really enlightening, or I don't know how to say it. And I think, it's already 7:45, so I will end here so that there is some space for debate that I think it's prepared now, and maybe we can delve on these ideas later. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Raúl. Really nice framing for all the different ideas. Actually, we never speak with you guys before what you're presenting, but in the end, they always fit so well together, the different presentations. Thanks a lot. Maybe we stop the recording here.